And Martin, step up to the plate.
I'm here.
What's up, man?
Nothing much. You hear me okay?
Mr. Mustache. Everybody, Martin Bingisser, you probably know him from Hammer Media, and man, you've been blogging for years, and former training partners, him and I, and the wife, and it's good to have you on here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Unlike your last guest, I have 0 medals and 0 Olympic Games participated in, but hopefully I can share some knowledge that'll make people think a little bit.
Absolutely, man. All right, you can get right to it, and I'll kind of keep track of the questions here, and you should be good. Thank you.
Perfect. You guys see the slides okay?
Yes, sir. We're good.
Good. So today we're going to talk a little bit about specific strength, special strength, however you want to call it. Rather than just showing you videos, and I can do that at the end, I can show you some examples and stuff of what we're doing for hammer throw, for shot put, for even some javelin stuff. But what I want to do a bit more today is look at, okay, what exactly is specific strength? Why do we need to train it? And why is it often overlooked? And then what are some tips or some best practices to use when you're trying to decide, okay, well, what exercises do I want to put into training, and how do I want to put them into training? So to start off with, what is specific strength? And I'm sure Dr. Bondarchuk, sorry, has come up quite a bit here, and he's been obviously a big influence on me. I mean, I trained together with Kidway for years and trained together with him either in person or long distance for 9 years. So he's a huge influence on where I come from. And I like to use his approach to figuring out, okay, well, what category do these exercises fit in? Because it really helps you afterwards see, am I ticking all the boxes? Am I doing everything I need to do as an athlete? And yeah, I'm sure you guys have heard this, or if you haven't, you'll hear it again from other speakers. But real quick summary is he has every exercise there is, he puts into 4 categories. There's the competitive exercise, that's, the hammer throw, the discus throw, the javelin, shot put, whatever you're doing. You have specific developmental exercises. That's where you take out a part of the movement. So it might be a release in the shot put. It might be winds in the hammer throw, or you're replicating the movement you're doing, but just a part of it. You have specific preparatory exercises. That's where, it doesn't even look like the event, but you're using the same muscles and everything. So it's specific in some regards, but not in the movement itself. And general preparatory exercises, which are like everything else, your warm up, your cardio, if you want to venture down that road. But specific strength, special strength, what we're talking about normally is what Bondarchuk would call specific developmental exercises. Those are the things that are between the weight room and the event, and trying to bridge that gap there. So like I said, that category, they have the same muscles, you're using the same energy systems, they're both explosive movements, and you're using part of the competitive movement. The only thing that's missing is putting it all together into the full throw. And there are different people that have written about specific strength. Bondarchuk's not the only one. Verkhoshansky, Yuri Verkhoshansky is a former Soviet high jump coach. He's written a book on special strength training. He goes into much more detail, and you might say, okay, time out. Well, specific development exercises, special strength, there's all these terms going around. Verkhoshansky talks about dynamic correspondence. Well, what the heck is that? You hear that talked about, and that's in his book, in Verkhoshansky's book, he breaks down movements, and he basically will measure, how specific a movement is depends on the dynamic correspondence. And he'll take the movement, and he'll take the competition exercise, and he'll compare them and say, okay, well, what direction is this movement going? How is the force production in the movement? How dynamic is it? What is the rate and the time of the maximum force production? How are the muscles working? Go into these small details to really do a comparison. What's the most specific thing we can do? And this is a really good checklist. I think coaches need to be able to look at these and see, at a high level, are the specific strength exercises I'm using ticking these boxes? But for me, this overcomplicates things. Specific strength is not a formula. There's not a best specific strength exercise. all specific strength exercises are they're tools to solve problems. And if we start going into the details too much, we lose sight of that. And if you want to compare Verkhoshansky to Bondarchuk, like Verkhoshansky, I think, tries to make things a lot more complex. And on the right-hand side there, Kibwe, you can attest to this. This is one of our training programs. This is every single training program we got. He would, find a scrap piece of paper next to the ring, write down, it's all the exercises there. The last exercise he just calls stomach, or back, because at the end of the day, what we have to do in training has to be usable. We can create all these formulas, but what good is a formula if we don't have devices out at the track to test the dynamic correspondence of a plate twist versus the kettlebell release? You need to have some tools in your bag that are really going to help you. And hopefully I can give you some different tools to work with today that will help you make specific strength simpler and easy to use. So why specific strength? There are quite a few benefits of it. And I'm just going to go through them a little bit, because what benefit you're aiming for is going to determine what exercise you want to pick for specific strength. First and foremost, you can get stronger. Obviously, it's in the name, specific strength. You pick up a heavy implement, hammer 16 pounds, shot put 16 pounds for men. You pick up something 20 pounds, 25 pounds, you're going to have to generate more force and power to get that thing moving. So there's a strength gain to it. There's variation. So if you do the same thing over and over, your body adapts to it and it's harder to get better. So variation prevents accommodation. It helps you get a new stimulus that'll help you reach a newer level. It also can help with motor learning. It's the same thing. A lot of people will learn through differences. It's called differential learning. By playing around and, throwing different implements at people that have them throw something heavy, something light, something normal, having that variation in training can help people develop a feeling for the implement and, help improve their technique. It allows for higher volume. Now, if I want to go out and, each event's going to be a little bit different, but in the hammer throw, after about 20 to 30 throws, the quality is going to drop off quite a bit. There's only so many, four turn full throws you can do with a good quality. But I could take, 15 high quality throws of the hammer and then do 30 kettlebell releases and then do 20 med ball releases. And, because you're just doing the med balls from a stand, you're not doing it with 4 turns, you can add in that volume and still maintain the quality at the same time. So it's a really good tool that allow you to get more reps in at a higher quality. I'm sure a lot of people, like when I was 18, 19, I would go out and take 50 throws in a session. And in hindsight, that was pretty stupid because all I was doing was ironing in bad technique after the 15th, 20th throw. So this is a way where you can keep that technique and still keep that quality in there and get higher volumes at the same time. It could be a technical tool. Essentially, the main purpose you want of specific strength, as I said, you're breaking the competitive movement into its parts. You're looking at, one part of the throw and you're overloading that. And by overloading that part, you can strengthen it and you can make it stronger. So if there's a weakness in a part of your throw, you can focus on that and you can use that for developing the technique there. You can really isolate it in a way that will promote the technique and the strength at the same time. You can connect the dots. A lot of, the traditional throws training will have a lot of throws and a lot of weight room, but that strength you're developing in the weight room is not always that easy to get out into the ring. Moving a 500-pound squat and moving a 16-pound shot put are different beasts. So having something in the middle can help you take the power from the weight room to, a heavier implement, and from that heavier implement back to the competition implement. So it's a good way to bridge the gap, connect the dots. In transfer training, that's Bondarchuk's book, and I shouldn't rag on Verkhoshansky because Bondarchuk could be difficult to understand, but the principles behind it are pretty simple. And if you look past all the numbers that Bondarchuk and stuff has, his main point is, if your squat gets better when you're a 50-meter shot putter or 60-meter shot putter, you're probably going to throw better. But like Ryan was saying there, with Nick, like getting stronger is not going to get him to the next level. He's got the strength already. So at a certain point, you've tapped out the transfer training you're going to get from these general strength exercises, and you have to look somewhere else, and that's specific strength. And a lot of Bondarchuk's research and work has shown that, yeah, until you get to, kind of a national level, general strength will transfer to the throw. But at an international level, the game changers are the people who can throw the heavy hammers the furthest. They're the ones who have the best special strength, in addition to that general strength. And across the board, it tends to be between hammer throw between 16 and 70 meters, shot put between 20 and 21 meters. Right as the athletes are about to get to international level, it's where that special strength and specific strength becomes more important. But it's important at all levels. We fall into this rut that the general strength is the way forward because we notice that and we can develop it quicker and we can measure it more. I can't measure my best in a kettlebell release as easily as I can with my back squat. So we get in this routine where we see one number go up, we see ourselves throw further, so we think they must be the case. But they're also, beginners can get a lot of gains from specific strength stuff. And with all the other points that I said before, you can impact the volume they're doing, the technique, and everything else like that. So that's some of the reasoning why we do it. And I think that's probably a bit better sell now than it was 15, 20 years ago. I think, in the 90s, people were just looked at special strength like functional training and, doing balance exercises on Bosu balls and stuff like that. And it's just like, this is crazy stuff. Why do you need that? Core training people would do, and sometimes that veers into specific strength, but it was a bit harder sell than it is now. I think the key though is how you implement it, because it's not just about copying what you see on Instagram. It's not just about, doing something for something's sake. The way you're going to get the most out of specific strength is really a targeted, nuanced approach. And got some examples I'm going to go through here which show how much of a difference some of these small factors can make. So the first point I like to make when it comes to implementing specific strength is similar is not the same. And here's the much younger version of me back when I was training with Kibwe. And Michael Letterlow's in this video too, but you see two exercises. You have a plate twist and you have a med ball release. And they look pretty similar. I mean, both of them, you're doing a rotational exercise, you're moving from left to right. So you might think, okay, well, they're pretty similar, but they're not. If you break it down, let's take the med ball throw first. A med ball throw is a ballistic movement. You start on the right side, you accelerate the whole movement, there's no deceleration, and you release it. So that's the dynamics there. And the plate twist, on the other hand, half of the movement is going to be acceleration. And then because you got to stop and go back to the other side, half of it's going to be deceleration. So you're constantly accelerating and decelerating. So they have a little bit different dynamics. And, if you look at dynamic correspondence, the med ball release is going to be much closer to the actual hammer throw. But that doesn't necessarily mean we always want to do a med ball release for hammer throwers, because they're going to have different benefits depending on what they need. Now, if I have an athlete who is weak in their release, they're not getting enough power into the implement, I'll choose a med ball throw. If I have an athlete who needs to work more on their postural control in the throw, I'm going to choose more of a plate twist, because you have to be able to stop the weight and go back the other way. You can only do that with good posture. So the needs are going to depend on what what you choose is going to depend on the athlete's needs. And just because both of them are moving back and forth doesn't mean they're working the same thing. Another example you could take is a plate twist with extended arms versus a plate twist with elbows to the body. They both look similar to back and forth, and you might say, okay, well, the one with the arms out looks more like the hammer throw, because the hammer throw, you've got long arms. But at the same time, you have to look at what's the limiting factor of those two. The limiting factor of a plate twist with your arms out is how much you can hold up with your shoulders. Whereas with your arms close to you, it might be a little bit less like the hammer, but you can also add more weight because you aren't stressing the shoulders as much. So all these things look similar, but by paying attention to the small details, you can start to see what's the advantage of one exercise versus another. Now, where do you start? What do you want to, as I said, specific strengths about breaking the event up into parts? Well, which parts do you want to do? Which parts do you want to emphasize and overload? It's going to depend a bit on the event. Example I like to use, shot put versus hammer throw. In the shot put, something like people like, I'm sure there are people on here who know the numbers better, but in the glide of a shot put, like 70-80% of the throw is going to come from the release. So in the shot put, it makes more sense to focus on the release, for example. Whereas the hammer throw, a lot more of the speed is coming from the entry. We get 60-70% of the speed already at entry. So having a good, strong, stable entry is going to be more important. So each event is going to be quite different, and you're going to have to look at it and see, okay, where do I focus on that event? Where is the key moments that really need to be isolated and strengthened? Related to that, so what are the key factors that connect those moments? So not just, okay, well, the release is important. Well, what makes a good release then? What is a key factor in making a good release? And as Sergey talked about earlier, the orbit of the hammer. The orbit of the hammer is really important. Well, what makes a good hammer orbit? It's a good connection with the implement. It's a good posture. So trying to figure out what are those factors that then go into those key moments. And in the hammer throw, one of the big things we've been working on with a few of my athletes this year is, again, postural control. If you're a hammer thrower and you take your winds, you might have really good winds, but if you hinge at the hips right at the start, throw your hips back because you don't have enough strength to keep to keep the right type of tension in the system and keep a connection with the hammer, you're going to lose it all. So you're talking about thoracic extension. You're talking about trying to maintain that posture throughout the throw. So with this athlete here, a couple exercises we did, we defined that as our key factor, and then we built some exercises around that. First one here is a med ball catch and throw. So I just throw a ball at him, tell him to catch it without moving, or with moving as little as possible. So he really has to be have good tension and stiffness to be able to catch it and then react quickly. Here's some aqua bag exercises I do. I'll talk about those a little bit later. Wind variations. By bringing the up over his head, it promotes thoracic extension, so he has to get up and then bring the weight down. Partner exercises are good. So with the aqua bag one, so that's basically it's a bag filled with water. By sloshing it back and forth, it creates a lot more momentum than you would just by turning a plate back and forth. And by having more momentum, it's even harder to stop. And basically, as I said before, if you don't have that good posture, you aren't going to be able to stop it effectively. So that's one exercise we use to make sure you have the posture, because the exercise forces that posture out of you. Other one we had in there with the strap, with two athletes turning back and forth. It's really helpful. It's a lot slower than the hammer throw would be, but it's really helpful at the eccentric component. Again, being able to brace and slow down a movement. We don't do that in the hammer throw, but that doesn't mean it won't help us, because building that eccentric capabilities is going to help us concentrically as well. And by doing it with a partner, it also makes it a little bit fun in training, and really can get a lot more load into it than me throwing a med ball to him and having him catch it. Define the key issues. So what are the issues that the athlete is having? So we've defined the key moments. We've defined the key factors that relate to the success in those moments. But maybe an athlete has a real big weakness they need to address. This is an exercise here, shows my thought process. We never really ended up using it that much because we found it other ways that were a bit simpler. But I had one athlete in the hammer throw, when their right foot touches down, they were collapsing on their ankle. They just didn't have a lot of ankle stiffness and reactivity to keep the system intact with the hammer. And as soon as that collapsed, their connection with the hammer was gone and everything. So I was trying to think, okay, well, plyometrics, that'll help with ankle stiffness. Maybe we can add a reactive component to it and make it a throw. So we just had kind of a rotational drop jump with the throw. in the end, what we ended up doing was just more sprinting. That helped them quite a bit. But just the thought process of what we were trying to do here is see, okay, here's an issue, play around and try and find something that'll work. Next thing I mentioned, so the motor learning, don't forget about motor learning, don't forget about specific strength as being a potential technical tool. If you do the right exercise, if you create the exercise in the right way, it can make it so the athlete has to do the technique the right way. A lot of specific strength exercises you do, like you just throw a ton of weight at the athlete and all it does is break down the technique. But if you structure a specific strength exercise the right way, it can build up the technique. And so I mentioned the aqua bags in the videos earlier, but same type of principle here. So this is not perfect execution, but it's a good example of what we're trying to get at. So I'll have them take a turn in one direction and then take a turn in the opposite direction. And you see that was a bad rep there. But essentially to be able to, and the cue I give him is, okay, do a turn and stop on 0 as fast as possible. So try and stop and come to a stop as quickly as possible. The only way to do that is if you have a good upright posture. If you're off balance, you're going to be like that rep right there. You're just going to fall over. So finding the right exercises can force them into a good technique, or at the very least, give them feedback so they know when they're doing it wrong. Same athlete again this morning. So here, we're just holding the shot put. We're just doing a release throw, hammer style, one turn. You see these done all the time with the kettlebell, but here we're doing with the shot put. And the reason for that is a shot put is a lot harder to hold. And if you can hold something tight, you can correct your mistakes. But if you can't hold on to it very well, your mistakes show themselves. So on the first rep, the one he just did, he does it much better. And the second rep, you see he yanks it. And with the shot put, when you yank it, it'll fly out early. So by creating the right tool, he automatically gets feedback where he knows I can only throw it straight if I do this right. And if it's going out to the right side, then I did something wrong. I'm pulling on it. So it's not just developing strength, but it's giving him feedback every time he tries to yank the release with his left shoulder. So that's some ideas about how it can be used as the learning environment. And Sergey, who was on earlier, this is a similar idea here. He's demonstrating his version of the trademark push point. You can send your royalties to Kibwe for that. But where is that point when you move from the active to the passive phase of the throw? And so here's another exercise where he just says, release it when you're done with that active phase. And if the ball goes straight ahead, you did it right. That was the first rep. The second rep, if you try to push it too far, push it too long in the first part of the throw, it's going to go over to the left. So simple things like that. It's the same weight med ball you're going to be using anyway. And it's the same technique probably going to be using anyway, but just by some small differences in how you set up a specific strength exercise, you can have it really help improve technique and develop that feeling at the same time. Now, I had to also throw in for Kibwe a superhero reference, but with great power comes great responsibility. You can make technique better, but you can also make technique a hell of a lot worse. And if you don't know what you're doing with specific strength stuff, I would just leave it on the side or keep it really basic. Rene Sack, I don't know, I didn't see his presentation earlier today, so I don't know which slides he was showing, but a couple of years ago, he presented and showed this slide of Nadia Mueller back before she was working with him. And, Germany has these really fancy specific strength machines. You've seen them for the javelin, you've seen them for the hammer, you've seen them for, all the throws and throwing events. They cost, 10, 20,000 a piece. They have these computer monitors in the front with these fancy readouts and everything like that. And you can load them up and really get good. And, this is one of the discus ones they have. So this is great and all because you can get a lot of load from it, but there's one big issue with this. This machine is the same size for a 5'10" discus thrower, for a 6'4" discus thrower, for a 6'9" discus thrower like Harding. And Nadine's a pretty tall woman. So how does she have to fit into that machine? She's got to bend over and kick her butt back in order to keep the thing on the track. She has to adapt her body to the machine rather than the machine adapting it to her body. And what is the result? She's in a terrible position right here. This is not the position she wants to be in when she's throwing. And when she came to Renee, he said every single throw in the ring was like this too. You know, she had done this machine so many times that she's starting to look like her actual throw was like that. It took years to correct. And the follow-up slide, which I didn't connect, is he had had his daughter playing on it, and he goes, "This is about the best use this machine is for." And when you go to Germany, a lot of these machines are, you know, used more as coat racks, so they're stuck in the back room with dust gathering on them for that reason. I think a lot of they can put out good data for sports scientists. They can look fancy and show that they're spending money on getting the athletes to the best, but when it comes down to it, it's not always improving athlete performance. And in some cases, it could be making it a lot worse. And it's the same thing I said. If you give athletes plate twists that are too heavy for them, all they're going to do is tighten up, and they're going to learn to turn like this. And that's not what we want to turn like in the hammer throw. So be careful. Because it's so close to the event, you have a lot of potential to bring in gains, but you also have a lot of potential to really mess things up. Another thing, move fast. Got the arrows on here because again, on the motor learning side, you know, there's two different processes where we coordinate movement. There's like a top-down approach where we say, I'm going to move my hand, and I move my hand. And then there's a bottom-up approach where we start to rely on reflexes. We start to rely on, you know, kind of learned movement patterns, peripheral connections. We get the feedback from the environment, and the body just does it. And when we move slow, it's a very top-down function. We can tell the body what to do. When we move fast, it's very bottom up. So it's important in the throwing events, we move fast. And so it's important with the specific strength exercises, we try and move fast as well, because if we're doing the specific strength exercises really slow, the whole movement pattern is going to be quite different. There's a role for slow movement, but you know, where possible, try and keep it fast, because then your body's going to be relying on the same reflexes, the same motor patterns and everything that they are in the actual throw. So try and move it fast, try and make it explosive. You know, we aren't doing these just to do them. We're doing them to get more explosive in most cases. So move fast at the same time and get the most out of it. But be creative. I was looking for pictures of us, Kidboy and I, doing this back in the day. I couldn't find any, but you know, we'd go to training camps and the weight room would be closed, and Bonnerchuck would be like, okay, well, pick up that rock, pick up that log. And all of a sudden it turned into like Rocky IV, except I don't have Stallone's abs or anything. But the idea is, you know, be creative, like not just with what implements you're using, but, you know, play around with things, make it fun. Just going in the weight room and doing twists over and over, it can get old for a while for the athlete. So try and really bring some creativity to the process and use what you have. You don't have to have the fanciest equipment. You don't have to have the German machines. You don't even have to have, you know, kettlebells or anything like that. Where there's a will, there's a way. You can make it work with whatever equipment you have. And don't forget to throw. Throwing is always the first priority. Never lose sight of that. Throwing should be the first priority. You can invest time in specific strength, but if you're not throwing a lot, that's going to be the biggest problem in your program. So throw first. You know, specific strength can be a cherry on top, but never forget that we're throwers, and the full technique is where it's going to help the best. Now, just a couple more ideas here, and then we'll have some questions. But how can you take all these ideas to the next level? So you go through this process, you find the right exercises, you find what the athlete needs, what the event needs, you put it into place, you address it. Well, what are some ideas? Okay, how can I progress this? And one way is you can use a more strategic season planning, periodization of specific strength. We talk about periodization of weightlifting, going from hypertrophy phases to speed strength and all the different phases throughout the year. Well, you can do the same thing in specific strength. Rene Sack is a good example again. He'll start with a preparatory phase, a strength phase, and a speed phase. And what that might look like for a discus thrower, preparatory phase, they're doing a lot of med ball throws, because with med ball throws, you can get a high volume and you prepare the body for throwing. By taking 100 med ball throws, you're building up the tendons, you're building up the muscles, you're really preparing and building the foundation for the year ahead. Strength, discus thrower might do one arm butterflies. It's a good specific strength exercise. He's done a lot of research on that and data, and shows for Nadine especially that helps her quite a bit. So one arm butterfly would be more strength oriented. It's heavier than the 1 kilo discus, and it's a good in that second phase. And then the third phase is more speed oriented, and here he'll do reactive throws. Nadine will be lying on a bench, he'll throw a med ball or shot put down, she has to catch it and throw it back. So you're getting a more plyometric component, you're getting a more explosive component. It's ballistic because she's releasing it at the end. So he will plan his specific strength throughout the year with a progression, and that's another way. It ensures you're not doing the same thing. It ensures you're building on the next onto the next training phase and taking it up. So session planning, as I said too, how you use the exercises can promote technique, but also how you design the session plan can help. I think one of the best, we always tend to go throwing, specific strength, weight room. Well, you can use specific strength as a warm-up if you want. Maybe an athlete has a technical problem in the release, and a specific strength exercise you have is really helping their release. Well, do 10 throws of that exercise before you get in the ring. That'll help click the athlete into that mode, get them thinking about the release. You can break up practice. I remember some of the sessions with Bondarchuk, we'd take one throw and do 5 releases, and one throw and do 5 releases, and one throw and do 5 releases, just so you really have to come back to the ring each time after doing the specific strength exercise that really focuses you back in on what you're trying to correct. So within the session, how you set up the session can also make the exercises more effective. And then I just want to finish with an example of Swiss thrower, how to make the exercises multiple dimensions. And we talked a little bit about exercises that focus on strength or on technique, but there are even more dimensions you can add into it. And as the athlete gets more advanced, you have to start thinking about what are the different boxes I can tick with just one exercise. So here, Schwerner Gunther with his coach, Jean-Pierre Egger. And you see here, he's just on 2 benches doing a shot put throw. Now, I had Jean-Pierre, his coach, does a lot of the coaches education here in Switzerland, and there are not many throws coaches. So when I was doing my certification here, we had 2 throws coaches and 1 teacher, and we had the whole day with him. And so we basically just went through this whole video and got a crash course on what the heck he was trying to do with each individual thing. And I found this exercise really cool because he broke down what he was aiming for. And it wasn't just, this is not just a special strength exercise. He is trying to help the athlete in 4 main ways, and everything he does, he can, go through it and list these 4 ways and how it helps. And the first one is he has a technical and coordination purpose. He's trying with this exercise, he's trying to help their technique and coordination by getting, balance and rhythm by changing up the environment. He's got to have a little bit better balance to execute a stand throw on a bench than he would on the ground. So he's adding a coordinative demand that's going to help improve the technique. He's got a mental side to it. You got to focus a lot more when you're afraid of falling off that thing, especially when you're moving fast and explosively. So he's got the technical side, and he's got the mental side. He's got a physical side as well. Obviously, he's throwing a heavy ball. He's launching it a long ways. So he's got a physical side, specific strength overload. So he's got technical, mental, physical. And then the interesting one I find, which are often missing from the specific strength stuff that really makes it multidimensional, is add an emotional edge to it. And you can do this with your shot put throws, with your hammer throws. It doesn't have to be specific strength. It can be anything you do in training. But think about how are you adding that emotional side to things. And what he would say is, he would make a bet with Werner. He would draw a square on the wall and ask, Werner, how many times out of 10 can you hit this? And Werner said 10. He knew he made the square too big. He'd make it a bit smaller. If Werner said 5, then he was like, okay, this is probably too hard of a challenge. So he'd try and find something that he could hit 7 or 8 times out of 10, and make a little bet on it and make a little competition, put a little pressure on the athletes. So they really have to step up and see how they react in a competitive environment. So he's getting that technical side, that mental side, that physical side, and that emotional side from one exercise. So think about not just what physical benefits you're getting from the exercise, but as you start to use them, start to think how you can layer them and get those extra dimensions in there as well. Do some Q&A here. I just want to get a quick plug in. As Kiwei mentioned on my site, hmmrmedia.com, we've got a ton of articles, videos, stuff from Renee, Nick Garcia, who spoke. Got a couple of books too, and if you sign up, we'll give you one of those books for free. So just email me afterwards if you're interested in signing up for one of our Plus memberships. But I don't want to take any time away from questions, so let's get into it. And here's my email address too. Feel free, if you don't get your question answered, shoot me an email, and I'm happy to follow up afterwards.
All right, great. Thanks, Martin. I see one from Joseph. When is the best time of the year to put in specific strength exercises?
I think the whole year. I don't know. I think I like Renee's approach. Like you're going to have it in there the whole year. But what you're doing is going to be a little bit different. If any time of the year we would drop it out, it's probably more towards the competition season, just to give the athletes a little bit more of a recovery. But I think it's important to have year round, because it does connect the dots. It does really help bridge the gap from the weight room to the ring. So it's important. But yeah, I think if you really have limited time and stuff, probably, and if you're following a more traditional approach for periodization, I think in the beginning of the year is more important, especially like in fall training. You get into it, your legs are beat up from squats and stuff. You're not gonna be able to take as many good quality throws in the ring. So substitute that with more specific strength stuff, and you're not gonna like ruin the athlete's technique just because they're burnt out in the weight room.
All right. I can probably make a guess at, well, let's start with this. My question is going to be like, when you're coming up and learning essentially how to train and what physiologically is going on, have you changed your approach or philosophy there from, say, earlier, maybe college or just after college, to now? What would you do differently?
I don't know if I changed that much, because I learned a lot by my mistakes. But what were my mistakes? I mean, like there were weeks when I would take like 300 plus throws in a week, like full throws. I would throw 6 days a week, 2 sessions of 25 throws. It's, 50 throws a day. And
was that after you visited Sambate? Or before
that? And before, like before I worked with Bondarchuk, I'd read a lot of his stuff, and I was like, oh, you just do the same thing over and over. And at that time I was doing like really high, a lot of throws and a lot of lifting at like, 80, 90%. So then I was like, okay, well, let's just do this, 90% squats every day and take 50 throws every day. And then, pretty soon I'm overtrained and run myself into the ground. But yeah, I mean, you don't need a ton. You don't need a ton of throws at the cost of quality. If you're getting throws just to get throws in because you're trying to chase 10,000 throws a year or whatever everyone says the Soviets threw back in the day, it's not worth it. Make sure that you're getting quality throws first before you're doing it just to get the reps in. So they need to be focused reps. You need a high volume, don't get me wrong, but I've had athletes that their quality starts dropping off after 10 throws, and then we're not going to take many throws. We're going to take a few throws, and then we're going to add a lot of special strength stuff on top so they can maintain the quality. That being said, I think what has changed actually over the last year, Sergey came out and worked with some of my athletes about a year and a half ago. And I was getting to the point where I would just cut throwers off once they had a couple bad throws. And he was saying, work through it. Like sometimes, you might have 15 good throws and then 3 bad throws and you're pulling the plug, but maybe throw 20, 21, 22 are their best throws. And that's where they figure something out because they were a little bit off and it forces them to focus a bit more. So I let it go a little bit longer to see, is this just a wave or is this like really where we need to call practice off? That's probably one thing that's changed a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of at the start, I was too far on one end of the spectrum, then I went too far on the other, and now I'm trying to find that middle ground.
Right on. Thomas, do you have any other correctional drills to assist with posture while working on strength?
Yeah, we've been using the aqua bag a lot, trying turns with that, trying releases with that. Different things there. We'll do turns with the bar on the back. Again, it's hard to get too round if you have to, have the bar on your back. Stuff like that. But basically, play around with things and you'll see it pretty quickly. If the athlete's able to get in the round hunched over position in that exercise, it's not doing its job. If that's what you're aiming for is posture. So try and find something where it really forces that. That would be my first tip.
Cool. And Jamar, one of the athletes in 40's TC. What's up, Jamar? Can you talk a little about the correlation, specific strength exercises to other exercises?
I don't quite understand exactly here. Are you talking about how they're connected in training or how the results flow back and forth, like transfer training?
I feel like, yeah, maybe that's what he's saying. Like, how do you add the special strength, or where and how much, in addition to? That's my takeaway. Jamar, chime in if.
Yeah, I mean I tend. The next question is about Bondarchuk's system. So Bondarchuk's system, we're doing the same thing over and over, and I think Derek will talk about that tomorrow. And we've got some videos and articles up on Hammer Media as well if you want to learn more about that. Don't have time to go into detail right now, but we're basically repeating stuff over and over, and we're doing a little bit of everything the whole year. So we're throwing all year, we're lifting all year, we're doing specific strength all year. But more and more, I will take a focused approach there. So yeah, we're doing everything in each block, but I might have a lighter hammer, I might have a faster Olympic lift, I might have a jump squat, more speed, explosiveness focused stuff. And there I would have the specific strength kind of match that if that's really the focus of that mini block or that mini phase. So that's one way that might be connected or fit together in training. So he falls up here. How do they transfer to non-competitive exercises? I think this is something also we talk about transfer training, like from the weight room to the ring, but you can transfer the other direction too. Like, and Kibwa, you might have examples of this too, but there would be times when I hadn't lifted heavy in like 2 years. I'd only done really easy snatch stuff. I haven't even done snatch in 3-4 months because I was doing cleans or other things. And then I pick up snatch and I'm at my PR or better. And like, when you think about it, if we think snatch is going to get us better at hammer throwing, well, why can't hammer throwing get us better at snatching? And, hammer throwing, you're taking it and, you're lifting it up. There is some link there too. So I think that specific strength can also help with non-competitive exercises. I mean, but in the end, it doesn't really matter because I don't really, what we're judged on is the competitive exercise. So we're only really thinking about, okay, what's the transfer in that one direction? That's the most important, but it is a two-way street.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone that's done that. Yes. Same / similar exercises. That's why, like, I don't get as testy about it. And we'll wrap up here quick. I don't get as testy about it as I used to, but like, that falsehood that, Dr. B and we're not into strength or whatever. And it's like, it's just not true. Now, the training is different. And so on its surface, right, when I say that my entire time with him, I never squat or I never cleaned more than 125, it's like, well, you don't do strength. Well, but exactly your analogy, like I could do that, but if I wanted to on the day to go up and essentially test my strength, I could do it. And I would be, I tell people within a single program, I would probably PR with all of my previous strength exercises. And I never actually attempted to do that, but Crystal did. There was a program, I think you were still there. There was a program where she was just like, you know, can I try? And he was like, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And he went to program, she PRs with like 10 kilos. And it's like, what? Like,
no, I did that every once in a while too. I mean, he never like approved it or whatever, but a lot of the years I was training on my own. So he'd give me something at the end of the phase. You know, I'm doing 70% in snatch and the thing's flying. And I'm like, well, I only got 1 or 2 sessions left. Let's add some weight on. Let's see where this is at.
Yeah.
And,
right.
you know, you just to give you that confidence, hey, it's still there. But yeah.
It's an amazing thing what volume does to, I suppose, maximal strength. Right. But anyway, Martin, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Make sure, if you have any other resources or something, we can direct people again to, if they want to get on your book offer, if they subscribe, right? If they subscribe to the plus option, they can.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But or just get in contact with me and we'll work it out. But it's bingisser@gmail.com. But so there's lots of resources up there, but there's also a lot of free stuff up on the site. I've been posting stuff for years, and it's a lot of options for everyone out there.
Yeah, I think all my blogs are still on there, aren't they? Those things are
the push point, man.
And the whoosh, those are the ones I still get people talking to me about, like to this day. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I wrote that. Anyway, thanks, man. Cheers.
No problem.